The galaxy had always watched humanity from a distance, as one might watch a spark drifting too close to a powder keg. Across the spiral arms, empires rose and fell with the weight of ages, but none drew such divided opinions, such wary fascination, such quiet fear, as the small blue world that refused to break when logic said it should. Earth, fragile and loud and endlessly stubborn, carried a reputation that echoed far beyond its borders, a species that learned faster than they should, adapted harder than they ought to, and fought long after defeat should have been accepted. For centuries the Galaxy Council kept its distance, observing through veiled channels, hidden proxy states, and sanitized scientific missions. Humanity, in their archives, was labeled volatile, concerning, potentially catastrophic if provoked. Yet the Council had never intended to provoke. They merely intended to manage, guide, influence, control. But intentions rarely mattered in the wide cold of the universe, especially when carried by species who believed themselves the rightful curators of galactic peace. It began with a ripple. A faint tremor along hyperspace corridors, as though the dark itself inhaled. Telescopes on the moon picked up distortions near Saturn. Subdermal implants across the orbital colonies shivered in sync. And in a quiet monitoring room beneath the Pacific, an analyst whispered the first warning. Something enormous was approaching, bending gravity like a clenched fist through water. When the veil finally parted, the fleet arrived without ceremony. No lanterns of diplomacy. No banners of peace. Only silver monolithic structures drifting into the solar system with the indifference of predators surveying a clearing. Their emblem, a ring broken by a single vertical line, glowed on their hulls. A symbol every archivist feared. The symbol of the Galaxy Council's enforcement branch. The world fell silent. From the neon towers of New Cairo to the frozen domes of Europa Station, the message printed across every broadcast signal: humanity had been deemed a destabilizing force. Their expansion too fast. Their resilience too dangerous. Their creativity too unpredictable. And their continued unmonitored evolution, according to the Council, threatened to shift the balance of power that had held firm for 10,000 years. The announcement struck harder than any weapon could. Not a declaration of war. Not a negotiation. A verdict. Pre-written. Signed. Delivered, but humanity did not kneel. Instead, they looked into the sky with defiance older than their written history. The kind that had carried them across oceans, across wastelands, across the vacuum of space itself. A species whose bones remembered hunger, storms, collapse, ice ages, extinction events, and still chose to rise. Every continent felt it at once, a slow, burning heat in the chest. A refusal. The Council ships moved in formation over Earth like cold gods preparing sentencing. Their engines thrummed, resonant enough to shake the upper atmosphere. Their message was simple: comply or be contained. Underground bunkers lit up. Sleeper projects awakened. The kind of programs denied, buried, and scrubbed from every surface-level database. Starcore Initiative. Redline Protocol. The whispered myth of Project Helios, humanity's last resort technology, never meant to be used, only meant to exist as a reminder that humans, when trapped, built miracles with blood on their hands. Yet even then, Earth hesitated. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. The Council had resources humanity could not match. Entire star clusters bent to their governance. Armies engineered for extinction-level precision. And still, the people of Earth knew something the Council had never been able to quantify in their algorithms: the human tendency to shatter predictions simply by choosing to. The first contact attempt came from them, a lone transmission broadcast in every Council language, synthetic and ancient alike. A transmission not of pleading, but of warning. A voice steady, measured, carrying centuries of scars beneath its tone. Humanity would not attack. But neither would they submit. The Council ignored it. They initiated the containment mandate, a beam cut through the darkness, thin as a hair, bright as a newborn star. It wasn't aimed at a city. Not at a fleet. Not at a military site. It carved straight into the Arctic, vaporizing a 1,000-year glacier simply to demonstrate scale. A gesture of dominance. A reminder of insignificance. That was the moment everything changed. On every screen across the world, on every colony, on every outpost, humans watched ice older than civilization reduced to mist. Something ancient in their collective psyche stirred. Something primal and furious and deeply familiar. The knowledge that once again, a larger force believed humanity small enough to cage. Quietly, the planet exhaled, and across every command center, every hidden lab, every classified bunker, a single message appeared: Project Helios, green light. The countdown began, and for the first time since arriving, the Council fleet hesitated. The countdown echoed through systems not meant to breathe again. Deep under the Mojave Desert, doors older than most spacefaring species shuddered as ancient locking rings disengaged. Helium-cooled conduits hummed with a rising pulse. Light crawled along metallic ribs like dawn seeping through mountain cracks. The Star-Core reactor, humanity's most dangerous promise, stirred from its engineered slumber. Above ground, the world moved with soundless coordination. Not frantic. Not desperate. Focused. Humanity did not scream, did not riot, did not kneel. They prepared, with the solemn clarity of a civilization that had faced extinction just often enough to remember the procedure. Orbital defense rings pivoted toward the intruding fleet, but held their fire. Settlements on Mars went dark as power was redirected inward. Luna's shadowside observatories switched to blackout protocols, their lenses redirecting all energy toward Helios. Every starship from the Atlantic armadas to the Pacific enclaves held position. Waiting not for orders, but for the spark, the Galaxy Council watched this with mounting confusion. Their algorithms predicted fear. They predicted fragmented leadership. They predicted diplomacy at all costs. But they had never predicted this calmness in the shadow of annihilation. The enforcement branch commander issued a second ultimatum, but the words, carried on beams of compressed neutrinos, met only silence, silence, and rising heat signatures from Earth's crust. The first seismic ripple wasn't natural. Sensors aboard the nearest Council dreadnought blinked warnings as the ground beneath the Mojave split open with the precision of a surgical incision. A radiant column surged skyward, pure white at its core, gold at its edges, a spear of burning geometry tearing into the clouds. The Council fleet shifted formation. Weapons humming, optics narrowing, but the beam wasn't an attack, it was a signal, the type humanity had never sent before. The kind that required impossible energy, impossible infrastructure, impossible audacity. A message encoded in a frequency that had not been used since the earliest days of galactic civilization. A frequency reserved for sovereign species. The Council's bridge crews reeled. Sovereign frequency was not permission-based. It was a proclamation. It meant, we recognize no authority above our own. The enforcement commander dismissed it as bluster, a last gasp from an overconfident primitive world. But other Council members, those with longer memories, recognized something else in the signal. A pattern buried beneath the layers. Old. Ancient. A mathematical structure used only once in galactic history, by a species so feared that their entire star cluster had been quarantined for 7,000 years, a species the Council had wiped out, or believed they had. Helios expanded, curling upward into a dome of incandescent latticework. Human satellites caught the rising shockwave and relayed data across the solar system. The structure was immense but controlled, forming a shimmering sphere encompassing Earth's upper atmosphere, a shield not of metal, but of stabilized spacetime. The Council's algorithms broke. This was not technology humanity should have had. Not this soon. Not without help. Unless humanity had discovered something in their isolation. Uncovered something. Revived something. The enforcement commander, unnerved now, initiated Phase 2 of the containment mandate. Hundreds of dreadnoughts rearranged themselves into a grid, their weapons locking onto the heliosphere. FTL compressed particle cannons whined as they charged, building enough destructive force to strip the Earth's atmosphere in a single synchronized pulse. Humanity watched. Not blinking. Not breathing. The countdown entered its final 20 seconds. In the Pacific bunker, scientists and engineers stood in the shimmering blue light of the StarCore display. Their hands did not tremble. Their eyes did not waver. They had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, a moment they prayed would never come, yet one they were born for. 10 seconds, Helios flared. 9, the grid of dreadnoughts locked their firing lines into perfect alignment. 8, winds roared across continents, drawn into the gravitational well forming above the Mojave. 7, Earth's magnetic field twisted like a serpent, feeding into Helios. 6. The enforcement commander gave the final order. 5, the universe seemed to hold its breath. 4, a rising vibration trembled through every council sensor. 3, a glow like a second sun erupted over the desert. 2, the dreadnoughts fired. 1, Helios awoke, a silent detonation of light, folding inward instead of outward, collapsing space around the entire firing grid. Beams meant to annihilate Earth bent like threads of light caught in a whirlpool. The Council fleet's attack vanished into a spiraling well of shimmering distortion, redirected, rewritten, absorbed. The dreadnoughts faltered, Helios stabilized, humanity stood unburned, and in that instant, every species watching across the galaxy understood something the Council had forgotten. Earth was not a world you cornered, it was a world you unleashed. The shockwave never reached the ground. It folded in on itself, drawn into the shimmering sphere wrapping the planet like a cocoon woven from the fabric of space. Storms halted mid-spiral. Dust hung frozen in the air. Even the auroras over the poles paused in eerie suspended motion, their colors stretched like brushstrokes across a silent sky. Then everything resumed at once. Helios pulsed, a heartbeat of radiant geometry, and every Council dreadnought within several thousand kilometers lurched off course as their navigation systems collapsed under the strain of warped physics. A few ships spiraled, hulls groaning as gravity dragged in contradictory directions. Engines sputtered. Algorithms failed. Entire fleets that once dictated the rules of engagement now scrambled to understand what law they were even fighting under. Helios had changed the field. And humanity had changed the rules. On the ground, people emerged from shelters, staring upward with stunned eyes. Children reached out toward the glowing atmosphere. Soldiers held their breath. Scientists reviewed live feeds with disbelief, scrolling through numbers that defied conventional physics. The Earth wasn't just protected, it was resonating with the Helios field, amplifying the planet's own magnetic heartbeat into a weaponized geometry of spacetime. For the first time since the Council's arrival, hope rippled across humanity not as a fragile flicker, but as a rising flame. The enforcement commander, suspended in the transparent bridge dome of his flagship, stared down at Earth with growing unease. This planet, this troublesome, outspoken, overly creative world, had just nullified an attack that should have vaporized its continents. His cortical implant began projecting predictions at frantic speed. None of them aligned. Every branching scenario ended in failure or unknown anomalies. He did not like unknowns. Below him, Helios expanded. Slowly, purposefully. Not attacking. Not posturing. Send a message, the commander realized. They are sending a message, but the Council was not accustomed to being warned. They escalated. A second grid assembled, much larger than the first. Hundreds of thousands of smaller interceptors moved into position, forming a shimmering sea of metal and living circuitry. These ships were old, the Council's original war designs from the era of subjugation. Machines built for planetary pacification. Their cannons did not fire beams or pulses, they ignited sectors of the sky. Burning swaths of atmosphere. Turning resistance into ash, the commander gave the order. Thousands of ignition drones launched toward Earth. Humanity watched with calm resolve. Inside the Mojave chamber, the StarCore reactor throbbed with impossible energy. Technicians wiped sweat from their temples as holographic displays spiraled with fractal patterns. Project Helios had not yet reached full activation, not even half. And yet the StarCore's readings projected something extraordinary. Earth was responding. The planet itself. The geomagnetic lines. The crustal resonance. The deep mantle currents. All amplifying the Helios lattice, as if the world had been waiting for this symphony. As the ignition drones streaked downward, their skins peeling with atmospheric friction, the sphere brightened. Lines of raw light threaded across the surface like arcane runes. They rotated, locked, and aligned into a defensive constellation. A low hum vibrated through every continent. The drones hit the shield. Not a single explosion followed. Instead, each drone, upon touching the Helios lattice, froze in place. Not destroyed. Not deflected. Suspended. Caught mid-flight like insects trapped in amber. Millions of tons of weaponized machinery silenced by a field humanity had activated only minutes earlier. On the bridge of the Council flagship, fear finally cracked through the commander's composure. This wasn't defense. This was dominance. The drones disintegrated, not explosively, but gently, unraveled into particles so small they drifted like dust. The heliosphere absorbed them, repurposing their energy. Data streams across Earth lit up with new readings, fuel conversion, material integration, rapid expansion. Helios was learning, and learning fast. From the hidden facility, Dr. Lyra Rivers, chief architect of Project Helios, watched the displays in awe. Her voice trembled with a mixture of terror and pride as she whispered a truth no one had expected to speak aloud. It's evolving. Across the solar system, the Council's reinforcements arrived in force. Titan-sized carriers. Leviathans forged from collapsed star matter. Battle stations the size of moons. All converging on Earth, their shadows blotting out starlight. The galaxy's greatest empire stood ready to crush a single world, yet Earth did not flinch. The Helios field shimmered brighter, casting gold onto oceans and cities. In its glow, the world seemed less like prey and more like a rising deity. The Enforcer fleet began powering weapons designed to crack crusts and peel atmospheres, but even before the first supercarrier fired, a ripple moved through the heliosphere, not outward. Inward, as though Helios were inhaling, the temperature across the globe shifted. Wind stilled. Birds fell silent. From the highest satellites to the deepest ocean trenches, humanity felt the same sensation, the brief, electric moment before lightning touches ground. Helios opened, a spear of light erupted into space, not chaotic, not directionless. A perfect beam. A message burned into the black. The symbols it cast were not human, they were older. They were the language of the extinct species the Council once eradicated. The galaxy trembled. On the Council flagship, sirens wailed as archivists scrambled through encrypted histories. Forbidden archives. Redacted records. Files buried beneath 10,000 years of deception. Helios had just broadcast the signature of a power the Council had vowed to erase from existence, a power that had nearly dethroned them, a power humanity should never have found. The Enforcer fleet wavered, and humanity, united beneath the shimmering shield of Helios, took a single breath, the kind of breath taken before the impossible becomes inevitable. The symbols rippled through the void like the echo of a dead civilization, exhaling after millennia of silence. They burned across the dark like molten constellations, weaving geometric warnings the Council had buried in their deepest archives. On worlds far beyond Earth, ancient species stirred. On uninhabited moons, dormant machines flickered awake. Across forgotten outposts, relics older than empires reacted to the broadcast with a single unified tremor, recognition. Helios dimmed after the transmission, its runic pattern sinking beneath the sphere like fading ink. But something had changed. The field no longer behaved like a shield. It behaved like a mind. A living, learning intelligence wrapped around the blue world beneath it. And though it did not speak, the presence it projected was unmistakable. Humanity was not alone behind the lattice of light. Something vast was aligning with them. Something impossibly ancient. The Galaxy Council felt the shift immediately. Ships staggered as their gravimetric sensors jammed with static. Battlefield AIs began broadcasting fragmented warnings. Strategic networks collapsed under the strain of unknown interference. The enforcement commander demanded explanations, but his advisors could only offer trembling theories. Helios was activating protocols that should have been impossible without direct lineage to the extinct ascendant race, a lineage humanity could not possess, unless the Council had made a mistake, unless the Ascendants had never truly died. Helios flared again, and the earth beneath it vibrated like a great drum struck by an invisible hand. Seismic sensors tripped across continents. Tremors rippled through the crust. Perfectly synchronized, harmonic instead of damaging. It was as though the planet itself had begun to resonate with the extraterrestrial pattern Helios projected. Oceans churned in spiraling currents. Clouds rolled into concentric shapes. The magnetic poles glowed like twin suns. Across the globe, people watched in stunned silence as Earth responded, not with chaos, but with order. A planet aligning itself to an ancient frequency humanity had unknowingly awakened. The Council misread it as instability. They unleashed their ultimate sanction. Arcs of gravitational fire descended from the supercarriers, rippling waves of compressed spacetime designed to collapse entire continents. They were weapons outlawed in every civilized sector of the galaxy, weapons only the Council kept for moments like this. Weapons meant to erase a species before it evolved beyond control. The first wave struck the heliosphere. It vanished, not blocked, not deflected, erased, cleanly consumed by the lattice as though the attack had never existed. The supercarriers paused. Their second wave faltered. Helios pulsed again, this time with a deeper resonance that rolled across the solar system like distant thunder. The pulse traveled into space, touching asteroids, ringing off moons, vibrating through the hulls of ships. It was a command. Not aggressive. Not threatening. A warning layered with ancient authority. Stand down. The Council refused. The commander ordered a third wave, but before the supercarriers could fire, the space between them bent. A distortion swept through the fleet, silent, brilliant, unforgiving. Council vessels twisted as though caught in invisible hands. Their trajectories shifted. Their fire control arrays failed. Entire armadas drifted helplessly as the distortion wrapped around them like a noose tightening. Helios had extended itself beyond Earth, not as an attack, as a declaration. Humanity was not prey, they were under protection. Inside the Mojave chamber, the Starcore reactor reached levels its creators had never projected. The containment walls glowed translucent white. Instruments flickered and died. The air hummed with an electric taste. Dr. Lyra Rivers stood frozen, her breath catching as a realization unfolded in the data streaming before her. Helios wasn't using the planet's energy, it was using humanity's, their collective neural patterns. Their shared defiance. Their will. Billions of minds connected by fear, courage, anger, hope, feeding the lattice with the one energy the Council had never been able to measure or predict. Human resolve. Across the galaxy, the ripple spread further. Old species who remembered the Ascendants whispered in terror. Younger species watched in awe. Space trembled. Stars flickered. And the enforcement fleet, once the symbol of galactic control, now found itself trapped in the web of something beyond their comprehension. The commander attempted to retreat. Helios would not allow it. Light erupted across the sphere, fractal and spiraling, weaving outward into constructs that dwarfed ships and stations. Ships that had once hunted rogue civilizations now drifted like insects before a rising storm. The space between Earth and the fleet folded, stretched, reformed, warping into impossible angles that reflected the dead language Helios had broadcast. Every Council ship powered down at once. The galaxy fell silent. Humanity stood at the center of it all, no longer a fragile world, but a beacon. A threat. A promise. A reminder that their species had always carried something unpredictable, something the Council had crossed the line in underestimating. Earth's oceans calmed. Winds softened. The heliosphere stabilized in a perfect golden glow, the lattice humming like the breath of a sleeping titan. humanity looked up at the shimmering sky and understood the truth. This wasn't the end of the confrontation, it was the beginning of their ascension. The golden lattice tightened around the planet, and for a moment the entire solar system seemed to drift in a dreamlike hush. Stars glimmered with unnatural clarity. Saturn's rings vibrated like strings of a cosmic instrument. Even the solar wind shifted course, bending around the heliosphere as though the star itself deferred to whatever Earth had become. But in the depths of space, the council was not finished. From behind Jupiter's shadow, colossal shadows emerged. 7 world breakers, planet-cracking constructs used only in the darkest chapters of galactic history, rose into view. Their hulls were forged from collapsed star alloy, their spines lined with gravitational lances capable of splitting moons like ripe fruit. They moved with the grace of titanic beasts awakening after an age of forced slumber. The council had kept them hidden for 10,000 years, forbidden by every treaty ever written. Their existence alone was a crime so great that any species deploying them would be erased by unanimous decree, and yet, in the face of Earth's impossible defiance, the council unleashed them. The Enforcer commander's voice trembled as he issued the order. Not from fear of humanity, no, that fear was growing but still new. He trembled because he knew the cost. The galaxy would not forgive this act. But they would forgive something else even less, losing control. Humanity watched from beneath the glowing sky as the world breakers aligned in a perfect arc. Their cores spun with sickly green light, bending spacetime like liquid. Energy readings spiked across the solar system. Mars went dark as its defense grids shut down to protect themselves. The asteroid belt split along unseen fault lines, fragments drifting in unnatural formations. Even the sun dimmed slightly under the gravitational distortion. The world breakers charged. In the Mojave chamber, the Starcore reactor flickered with violent pulses. The room shook, dust rained from the ceiling. Scientists braced themselves against consoles. Alarms blared, then died, overloaded by numbers no instrument could process. Dr. Lyra Rivers stared at the impossible waveforms on the display. Not fear. Not panic. Revelation. Helios was no longer responding to commands, it was anticipating them. Earth exhaled again, not through atmosphere, but through the Helios field itself. A low-frequency pulse rolled outward, so deep it shivered the hearts of everyone on the planet. A feeling like standing on a cliff in a thunderstorm, hearing the rumble before the lightning strikes. Then Helios whispered, it wasn't sound. It wasn't language. But every human felt it at once, resonating in their bones like a truth they had always known but never spoken aloud. Stand with me. The world breakers fired, their beams did not travel. They unfolded, tearing open linear scars in the fabric of the solar system. Gravity buckled. Space rippled. Light screamed. It was the kind of attack no shield had ever survived. Helios responded, not with a barrier, not with force, with geometry. The lattice reconfigured at the speed of thought, folding into fractal layers that aligned with the incoming gravitational waves. Instead of blocking the attack, Helios guided it, bending the energy like a river diverted around a mountain. The beams split into spirals, curving harmlessly around the sphere, redirected into the expanse of space where they diffused into harmless bursts of light. The world breakers recoiled, their firing spirals destabilizing under the strain. One buckled, its spine fracturing into molten shards. 2 more staggered backward, losing alignment. The gravitational scars sealing behind them like wounds healed by unseen hands. Helios pulsed again, brighter now. Its shape expanding beyond the atmosphere. Human satellites vaporized as the expanding lattice passed through them. The sphere stretched into a massive structure that wrapped the entire orbit of the moon, then contracted, then unfolded into a new configuration, no longer a shield, a chrysalis. Humanity stood beneath it, breathless, trembling, united. In orbit, the remaining council fleet strained against the pressure as Helios generated a massive gravitational well. Their ships groaned, hulls cracking. Systems shut down one by one. They were being held, not attacked, not destroyed, held in place, pinned like specimens beneath a cosmic force they could not comprehend. the Enforcer commander fought for control, issuing frantic overrides, trying to break free. But the constructs binding his fleets were older than anything the Council had preserved. They recognized authority the Council could not command, and when Helios opened once more, it revealed something no Council member ever expected to see again, a silhouette, not human, not machine, a towering form of living light, standing within the heart of the lattice like a reborn god rising from a tomb of starlit dust. The figure was woven of fractal geometry and ancient memory, its shape shifting between forms too complex for the human eye to fully process. And yet, in some impossible way, its presence felt familiar, comforting, as though humanity had been walking toward it for thousands of years. The Council screamed, archivists fainted, and Earth simply watched. The Ascendant Echo raised an arm of light, and the Helios lattice responded, unfurling like the wings of a celestial titan. Every Council ship trembled. The figure spoke without words, broadcasting across space in the same extinct language Helios had transmitted earlier. A message not of aggression, of judgment. Humanity heard nothing but the quiet hum of power. The Council heard a death sentence written in the language of their oldest nightmare. Stars dimmed, the solar wind reversed direction, and the Ascendant Echo's final gesture bent the world breakers as though they were made of foil. They shattered, silently, beautifully, fracturing into luminous debris that drifted through space like the ashes of fallen titans. The Council fleet went dark. Earth's people looked to the glowing sky, realizing with slow, dawning awe what had just occurred. Humanity was no longer being defended, they were being claimed. The Ascendant Echo hovered in silence, its form shifting like living starlight, its presence pressing gently against the fabric of human consciousness. Across the world, people felt its gaze settle upon them, not cold, not distant, but searching, curious. As though it were rediscovering a species it once knew, one it had waited for across a gulf of forgotten millennia. Helios folded inward, its lattice spiraling into intricate layers around the figure as though it were the nucleus of a newborn star. The chrysalis that had wrapped Earth dissolved into a shimmering aurora cascading across the planet's skies. Every ocean reflected it. Every glacier shimmered beneath its glow. Every city bathed in the quiet gold of a dawn that felt older than the sky itself. The Council fleets hung paralyzed in orbit, held by a force they no longer dared to resist. Their systems tried to reboot, but Helios suppressed each attempt with a gentle but absolute command. The Enforcer commander stood motionless in the transparent dome of his bridge, staring at a world he had intended to break. Now glowing with a power that frightened the very empire he served, humanity felt a weight settle in their bones. Not fear. Not threat. Revelation. In the Mojave facility, the StarCore reactor settled into a stable resonance, the trembling walls falling quiet. Screens flickered back to life. The light steadied. Dr. Lyra Rivers let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her voice, barely audible, trembled with awe as she stared at the readings. Helios was no longer draining the StarCore, it was sustaining it, feeding energy back into the reactor, enriching it, evolving it. Earth was no longer just activating a system, it was completing one. The Ascendant Echo raised its hand. And the fleets around Earth began to drift, their orientation shifting as though an unseen gravity well adjusted their course. Metallic behemoths that once inspired fear across dozens of star systems now looked like relics before a rising titan. The Council's flagship rotated until its dome faced the glowing figure directly, then something impossible happened. The figure stepped forward, across a distance of hundreds of kilometers. It moved as though the vacuum were nothing but air beneath its feet. Its presence expanded, filling space with ripples of energy that danced like auroras. As it passed, ships caught in Helios's grasp dimmed in reverence, their lights flickering like candles near a storm. The Echo drew close to Earth, descending toward the atmosphere. Clouds parted for it. Wind stilled. The sky bent around its form in spirals of luminous geometry. Every human heart beat in unison, synchronized by something deeper than biology. The figure lowered itself until it hovered just above the Helios-woven barrier. Humanity felt a pulse, a question, not with words, but with recognition. Helios had not chosen Earth by chance, humanity had not awakened an alien relic, they had awakened an inheritance. The ascendant echo extended a hand toward the surface, and the barrier parted like silk. A column of light touched the planet, sweeping across continents and seas in a single gentle motion. Where it passed, something awakened, dormant structures buried beneath the Earth's crust, crystalline networks hidden in trenches, vaults long folded between spacetime layers. They opened, one by one, each emitting a pulse that answered Helios, forming a global web of resonance. For thousands of years, humanity had believed themselves alone. Now they understood, they had been incubating something vast. On the Council flagship, the commander finally broke. His composure shattered as he shouted for retreat, for hyperlane jumps, for any escape that did not end in annihilation. But none of his commands reached the engines. None of them reached anything. Their systems were no longer theirs. Helios was rewriting the battlefield, the ascendant echo raised its hand again, and the captured fleets drifted outward, gently, almost mercifully, like toys being set aside. Their weapons powered down. Their navigation locked. They were no longer a threat, nor even a concern. Humanity did not cheer, their awe was too great, their wonder too deep. Then the echo turned its full attention toward Earth, a final projection emanated from its core, spreading across the sky in patterns of golden light. Humans watched as the symbols unfurled, ancient and infinite, resolving into a single meaning etched across the heavens: you are ready. The world held its breath, Helios brightened to a blinding radiance. Its lattice dissolving into streams of energy that flowed into the ascendant echo. The figure expanded, its form rising like a newborn star emerging from chrysalis. Light bled across the void, washing over the moon, reflecting off every frozen council hull. The solar system vibrated with a resonance so deep it echoed in the core of every living being. The echo ascended, drifting toward deep space. It paused for a final moment, as though waiting for Earth's response, or perhaps offering a silent promise in return. Then it vanished, not with a flash, not with a jump, with a slow, graceful fade, like a titan slipping between the folds of reality. Helios dissolved with it, the skies dimmed back to blue. The winds resumed, life resumed, but nothing was the same. Humanity stood beneath an ordinary sky with an extraordinary destiny. The Council fleets floated helplessly in orbit, now prisoners of their arrogance, forced to bear witness to the truth they had denied for generations. Earth had not risen to defy the galaxy, Earth had risen to join it, and somewhere in the silent dark beyond the solar system, an ancient power waited for its newest inheritors to follow. The new age of humanity had begun.